What is the hardest part about getting your podcast noticed? We're going to address that in today's Podcast Therapist episode. I did a survey on my community tab on my YouTube channel that asked people this very question. What is the hardest part about getting your podcast noticed? I had 4 different options there, but would you believe that 50% of the podcasters that responded said that promoting their podcast on social media, that is their biggest challenge when it comes down to creating podcasts. I certainly understand this, and I know that you understand this because promoting a podcast can seem wildly overwhelming when already you're creating content that seems to be already overwhelming. You have to do the production, you have to do the editing, you have to get it uploaded and published. And that can already seem like an overwhelming task as it is. So I want to address to you some common struggles that I know that podcasters face. You might fall into one of these categories. Number 1, you might feel as though that you feel lost in the content overload. You don't know where to start. You don't know which platforms to publish to. You feel as though that you need to be on Facebook, but you also need to be on YouTube. And you're hearing all this conflicting information about which platforms you actually need to be on. And I understand that because I have fallen and I still fall into that trap every now and again. Number 2, maybe you don't know which platforms you need to prioritize. That is something that every podcaster faces. They hear the conflicting information about you have to be on TikTok in order to get the visibility, and that is really going to boost your content, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is a common struggle that podcasters have. Number 3, you might be spending too much time producing the content and not enough time actually promoting the content. Do you fall in that category? Number 4, you might lack confidence in marketing or social media skills. There's a lot of podcasters out there that don't know what marketing is or know how to use social media to its fullest potential. And you don't have to be a pro at it. You just have to be a pro. Well, we'll hold that off for a point that's coming up here very shortly. Number 5, you might be expecting that your podcast has to grow really fast. You have to have a certain amount of downloads that are coming. And then you get discouraged when that doesn't happen. And then that just makes you not want to publish a podcast ever. Or even, if you're publishing it, you just don't even want to promote it at all. So I completely understand that. So today we're doing a little bit different of a format of the podcast itself. All right. I'm starting off with these points because I think these points are important to think about. You have to think about the common struggles that you are facing as a podcaster. But with that being said, I want to ask 2 questions that I want you to take a moment and think about as we go into the introduction. I want to ask you these 2 questions. I want to ask you, number 1, what is your current social media strategy and how well is it working to achieve your podcast goals? Have you set those goals? The second question I want to ask you is, how much time are you spending on production versus the promotion aspect of your podcast? And is that balance really helping or is it hindering the promotion of your podcast? I want you to think about that. Think about it hard, and then we'll come back and we'll answer that question and we'll get to the root cause of why you feel this way.
When you're one unbalanced piece of audio from losing your... This is the Podcast Therapist.
That is right. Welcome to another episode of the Podcast Therapist. As I said, we're doing a little bit different of a format today. Because what I am doing is I am actually focusing on the analytics that I see inside of my YouTube podcast, and I'm applying that to what I am creating, which is something that you should be doing as well. So if you like this podcast, make sure that you go ahead and hit the like button on YouTube podcast and make sure that you hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell that is on your screen so you can get notified when I drop a brand new podcast. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit that follow button. And then, of course, make sure you leave a review, a rating and a review so that this podcast can get out to other people and help them out with their problems of trying to get their podcast promoted out there. All right. So as I mentioned, we're trying to identify the root causes of why you feel this promotion aspect of your podcast can be so overwhelming. Now, I want to share with you a story really quick about root causes, and bear with me when I tell you this story, okay? Because it really is going to relate back to your podcast promotional efforts on social media, okay? A couple of years ago, I was coming home from work, or I came home from work, And the ritual that I had when I came home from work was that I would put my stuff away. I would get into my shorts or my pajamas, I guess, and I would get a bag of popcorn and I'd pop that bag of popcorn and then I would put it in a bowl and I'd eat it and I'd watch TV. And then I'd just fall asleep after I ate that bag of popcorn. Okay. Now I eat the whole bag like a big pig, right? So that was what my ritual was. And it wasn't until months later that I had started to feel pain in my esophageal area and especially near the throat area. And I couldn't figure out like why this was a problem because it wasn't a problem in the past. I'd been doing this, on and off for years at working night shifts, but it just started to become more of a thing for me. And I was like, I can't understand why this is happening. So I went to the doctor as a result, and he diagnosed me with GERD, so gastroesophageal, acid reflux or whatever it is. So basically acid reflux that was happening. But I felt as though I had a piece of food always stuck in my throat. And so his diagnosis was, came at a time when I thought I was being more invincible than I could be, right? But he basically told me, look, if this is what your habit is and this is what your ritual is, you're coming home, you're making that bag of popcorn and you're consuming food and then falling asleep and you're lying back, that is going to cause problems. It's going to create acid reflux, and that will be a main problem. You need to address that root problem to alleviate this. And I said, well, don't you have like a pill that you can just assign for me or give to me that can fix this? He goes, yes, but it shouldn't be taken over long periods of time. And if you're just going to continue to have this problem, then you're going to cause problems later down the line in your life. And me being kind of someone who is really conscious of their health, I said, okay, so what do I do? And he says, well, addressing the root cause means that you're going to have to not eat before you go to bed. And if you do decide to eat, you have to wait at least 2 to 3 hours before you actually fall asleep. So that was kind of like a crush and blow to my ego. But I said, okay, yeah, if that's going to make me feel better and get this horrible feeling out of my throat, I will do that. So for a month, I went ahead and I took on that, I guess, prescribed advice. And would you believe that the issues with my GERD, they started to go away. And after 2 months, they were almost completely gone because I had stopped eating before I went to bed. And I still ate at night, but I just wasn't going to bed until a little bit later. All right. And that presented a whole other set of problems for me. Since then, I have created new habits that help me instead of hinder me. Now, the reason why I bring up this story is because as podcasters, we wonder why something isn't getting the visibility that it deserves. We're trying to figure out why we're not getting the results that we deserve. And when we don't address the root causes of these problems that we have, we find ourselves in a loop of always feeling as though nothing ever works, nothing is ever going to get seen or heard, and it's a lost cause. I get it. I totally understand it. But sometimes you have to address these root causes and make a change for yourself so that you can see your own podcast succeed. The same way that you want to see yourself not suffer physically, you must address the root cause. All right? So what are the things that are really holding you back? We got to get deeper behind the ideas of this overwhelm of social media for yourself. So if you fall into these categories, then I want to present to you some solutions that you can apply to your social media marketing strategy for your podcast, all right? So the deeper problems behind your overwhelm is that maybe you're overcomplicating the workflow process. I talked about workflows in my podcast about objectives. I will leave a link for that down in the description of this podcast on YouTube Podcasts. I will also leave it down in the description of Apple Podcasts and Spotify, because that is the episode where I talk about, in the very beginning, I talk about workflows and the workflow I create for YouTube podcasts and how that folds directly into audio podcasts. So I try not to overcomplicate the workflows. I try to streamline them. You're trying to streamline them as well. I understand that. But maybe you need to think about the workflows. Maybe you're spending too much time editing. Maybe you're spending too much time scripting. Maybe you're spending too much time refining the content and afraid of getting it out there. So maybe overcomplicating the workflows is really overwhelming you. And it is leading into the next point. It's creating some type of paralysis from creating content or maybe creating wrong content that you don't want the world to see because you feel as though it's not good enough, or that there's going to be some type of inaction on the episode that no one's going to take and they don't care about it. I get it. I understand that. However, your perfectionism, if that paralyzes you from publishing anything from social media content, maybe you need to rethink that for yourself. Really look deep inside yourself about where you can see and make the improvements. Other problems that you might find for yourself is that maybe you view promotion as more of an afterthought because you create this podcast. You just go, it's just out there. I don't need to promote it at all. Podcasting and marketing aren't seen as one cohesive process. Podcasting has its own process. Social media has its other process. But there are ways where we can plan for that process in social media by implementing inside of our podcast. I will share some of that here in a second, all right? Now, some other questions that I want you to think about as we talk about this, okay? I'm going to ask you these questions, and I want you to genuinely think about them for yourselves and answer them in your head. Number one, what part of your workflow feels the most time-consuming, and how is that affecting your ability to promote effectively? I'm not going to answer it for you. I'm just going to ask these questions, okay? I'll ask it again. What part of your workflow feels the most time-consuming, and how is that affecting your ability to promote effectively? Number two, how do you define success on social media, and what small wins have you celebrated so far? And number three, what have you noticed about your audience's behavior? What types of content do they engage with the most? Think about these questions. Rewind, go back, listen. Ask yourself these questions. Answer them in your head. Take it a step further and pull out the Notes app on your phone and take notes. So I want to share with you actionable solutions that you can take so that we can get over this hump about promoting our podcast. All right? So when it comes to social media promotion, we need to focus on a few things. I've written down 6 things that you can take for yourself. All right. Number one, I want you to simplify your focus. All right. Simplify your focus in terms of which platforms that you're on. You don't have to be on every single platform. All you need to be on is 1 or 2 platforms. That's it. Don't overwhelm yourself. You may hear other people talk about how they are on Instagram and they're on TikTok and they're on LinkedIn and they're on Facebook and they're on Threads and they're on X and they're all of them, right? That's even overwhelming for me. I came to a point in 2021 where I decided I was going to only focus on Facebook for my radio audience because being in other areas was just way too overwhelming. So I was really going to focus on Facebook. Then I added Instagram a little bit later. That's all I do. You can do exactly the same thing. So pick 1 or 2 platforms instead of trying to be everywhere. So I want you to think about this. What platform is giving you the most engagement and traffic up to this point? Can you double down right there? Can you really start putting the efforts into an Instagram page? All right. If you decide that you want to put all those efforts in Instagram, maybe you need to start studying Instagram a lot more. Just focus on 1 or 2. You don't have to focus on all of them. Sure, a lot of these apps are a lot of fun, but you don't have to focus on all of them as far as your promotions efforts are concerned. All right. Point number 2, repurpose content instead of creating things from scratch. Okay. This can make a big, big difference in how you promote your podcast. So I'm going to tell you this right now. I do not want you to use audiograms. I just think they just don't work these days. I was just talking to my friend Jeff about this earlier this week, and he was just like, do audiograms even work? Because I brought something up about an audiogram that I had seen on a website. And he goes, do those even work? And when you think about it and you look at audiograms online, you see them, the little waveform may be bouncing up and down, but I'm not really clicking on those. Instead, what I would rather you focus on is that I would rather you focus on quotes that you take from your own podcast episodes. So quotes, you want to create quotes that you would likely create inside of Canva or Adobe Express. and then create like carousels. You could create carousels in Instagram if that's where you're promoting. Create carousels of those quotes and publish regularly. Utilize the scheduling feature on there. You can do key takeaways that you have inside of your podcast that you're recording on. This can be audio or video, does not matter. All right. So what you have to think about is you have to ask yourself the question, are you maximizing the content that you've already created, or are you starting from scratch every single post? You don't want to start from scratch every single post if you don't have to. Okay. I'm going to share with you a very good tip here after this next point on why you do this, or actually maybe after point number 4. I'll get to it. I promise you that. Point number 3, streamline editing to free up time so that you can promote. I have a whole course on this. Let me reread that, okay? You want to streamline your editing so you can free up time to promote your podcast. I've created a course, not that I'm promoting this so that you can go and ask about it or anything like that, but in reality, when it comes down to podcast editing, and there's a lot of audio podcast editors that exist out there. There's a lot of video podcast editors that exist out there. But I remember I created a course many years ago all about how to edit a podcast in Adobe Audition to streamline that process. And I reduced a lot of the time spent in the editing room floor or on the cutting room floor so that I could actually publish more podcast episodes. At the time, I was doing a lot more YouTube videos, so I was streamlining that process so that I could pump out a new YouTube video over and over and over. So some of the things that I think you should think about when it comes down to your editing process to streamline it have to do with more mental aspects than it has to do with the technical aspects. When you think about it, are you removing every filler word from your editing process? Maybe you're using something like Descript and it removes the filler words, but we all know if we've used Descript that when it removes filler words like like, you see where the editing from Descript makes it sound a little bit more robotic. So wouldn't it be better just to leave some of those in? You can edit a few of them out, but maybe you just don't have to edit all of them out. So stop over obsessing over these filler words, because we don't talk like robots. People don't listen to things that sound like robots. They like to listen to the authenticity that is behind your voice. They like to hear pregnant pauses. They like to hear the emotion that goes into what you're sharing in your story, whatever you're deciding to talk about. Other ways that you can streamline your podcast is that maybe you're doing those batch recordings. Now, I like to try to batch record, but I like to also do things in real time. I like to record in the moment. This podcast today is a very in the moment thing, because that survey really drove me into action by saying, I need to address this for podcasters because this is a problem that they're addressing and they need solutions for it. So if you want to batch record, by all means, batch record. You can edit smarter by utilizing tools like, maybe you're using a tool like Descript. Descript isn't a bad product. I have Descript and I utilize it for my YouTube shorts, but maybe you use that for your podcast, or maybe you're doing it for an audio podcast. You need to figure out a template that you build inside of Adobe Audition to streamline that process. So ask yourself the question, what can you let go in your editing process to free up more time for promotion? Perfection should not be the thing that you're looking for. Perfection should be something that it doesn't exist in your vocabulary in this particular instance. Because I look at podcasting as almost like an art. It's an art form. It's going to change over time. And if you can have the ability to change with your podcast, then to me, that's true perfection. Point number 4, you want to plan for promotion while recording. This is something that is super duper fun for me because I can think about all these things that I'm going to talk about in my podcast episodes, and I've utilized them for YouTube shorts, right? Yeah, you could do the same thing if you're creating quotes or you're creating reels or whatever it may be. But what you're trying to plan for when you're looking to promote a podcast is you're trying to plan for recording sound bites that can be social media clips that are done intentionally in your recording session that you can go back to and clip out and utilize for a promotional piece. I mean, you got to think ahead. That's what this is all about. You're just thinking about streamlining the process, thinking ahead. Think ahead as much as you can. All right. Also, maybe you write show notes with shareable snippets in mind. Now, here's the quick tip that I wanted to share with you. The quick tip on creating shareable snippets for yourself. I use a combination of these two online products. I utilize ChatGPT and I utilize TurboScribe. Now, TurboScribe is it's a transcription service, all right? So you can upload your audio into it and then it'll transcribe it. It's got all these really cool features on it. I promise you this is not a promotional ad. I'm just telling you this is what I use to create this very podcast, all right? Now, I use these two products for myself. I utilize TurboScribe to transcribe the audio from my podcast, and then I can pull that transcription audio or that transcription from itself, and then I can create blog posts or I can create social media posts through ChatGPT using the exact same language as what is in the actual TXT file or transcription that I've uploaded into TurboScribe. So this is how it looks for me, okay? Maybe I'll do a short tutorial video that is on my YouTube that talks about this, all right? But this is what I do. I upload the audio into TurboScribe. I let it do its thing. It's pretty fast. For an hour-long podcast, it might take, I don't know, maybe it'll take about 5 minutes to transcribe that. And within TurboScribe, within TurboScribe, I can go in and it has a feature inside of TurboScribe where it says, would you like to create a blog post? Would you like to create social media posts? Would you like to create summaries? Would you like to, it gives you all these options. And I'm like, holy cow, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. And what it does is it utilizes the framework of ChatGPT to give you all those pieces of content. So that's how I'm utilizing this as far as written content is concerned that I do plan on promoting and publishing onto social media to make it a little easier. Because it's almost impossible to go back and listen to the entire podcast episode to write down those key moments or those key, I guess, those shareable snippets. It's impossible to do that. But we have to utilize the technology that exists for us to help us create this promotional content. That is what is going to make it easier on you. So ChatGPT and TurboScribe. I'm going to leave a link for TurboScribe down in the description of this particular podcast so that you can go ahead and check it out. I'm pretty sure everyone has ChatGPT at this point. But I would say get a paid version of ChatGPT. That'll make your life a lot easier. So I want you to ask this question for yourself in this section. Are you thinking about promotion while recording your episode or only doing it afterwards? Where can you streamline for yourself? Point number 5. I want you to start engaging authentically and not just for the algorithm. Now, I know that I have said that you have to do SEO for your podcast. You need to optimize your videos. You need to do titles. You need to do descriptions. You need to have tags. You need to have cards. Now, this is for video podcasts. When it comes down to audio podcasts, I have told you set up your website, set up email marketing solutions, set up lead magnets, all of these things that come with promoting a podcast. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, the algorithm isn't going to do all of the lifting for you. You have to do the lifting for yourself. You have to put the reps in. That's what's key here. So I want you to start focusing on the conversations that are happening. If you're doing all your promoting only on Facebook, then maybe what you need to focus on is joining groups within your niche and contributing to those conversations that will get people to be like, this person really helps out. This person really is a valuable resource. And at some point, maybe they start looking at your page. They look at your podcast. They see what you're promoting. That's one way that you can do that. So focus on conversations and not just the content. You need to reply to DMs. You need to reply to comments. You need to reply to questions. I'm falling behind on this. Quite honestly, personally, I've got someone who has emailed me. They emailed me probably about a week ago. I haven't gotten back to them, but I do plan on getting back to them about this. But it is important that you do get back to them to show that you are a human, that you do care about your listener. You have to engage with them authentically. Don't put it on autopilot. Under this section, I also want you to use certain calls to actions that will encourage people to give you responses. Ask them what their biggest takeaway was when you're in the podcast and you're recording. Hey, what was the biggest takeaway for this podcast episode? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Leave a comment on the YouTube video or make sure you reach out to me through my website at, nameyourwebsite.com. All right. Engage with them or have them reach out to you on social media. And if no one whatsoever reaches out to you on social media, that's okay. You want to build in a habit of telling people to reach out to you on social media so that they are always welcome at your door. Do that. It does work and it does happen. And as you continually, consistently publish podcast episodes and the algorithm takes a hold of what you're publishing, then it'll start showing it to more people, whether that be on the web, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Just show up. That's all you got to do is just show up every single week. Okay. So the reflection that I want you to take part in right now is that, or the question, I guess, is, are you talking to your audience on social media, or are you just talking at them? No, you want to ask them questions. I do this on the radio all the time, whether it be on social media or I'm asking them a question. Hey, I'll ask them a question on the air sometimes, and I'll say, hey, tell me what your favorite, tell me what your favorite sweet treat is after dinner. And then give me a call, and then I'll give the number out, and then they can call me up. That's real immediate, but with social media and podcasting, it's a little more delayed. But still, I encourage you to go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, when it comes down to using tools, and this is point number 6, when it comes down to using tools for promoting your podcast, you've got to take advantage of these. All right. You've got to use the tools that will make it easier on you. The scheduling tools are really going to be key here. All right. So scheduling tools that I would recommend for myself, I recommend for myself is I always recommend that you schedule natively inside of the app if you have that ability to do that. So for instance, I like to schedule things inside of YouTube itself. The scheduler, that's fine. I can do it there. I can't do a lot of things in bulk, but I can do enough in there to where I can schedule out a month's worth of content if I want to. That will allow me to go ahead and make it a little easier on myself. If you're an audio podcast and maybe you're promoting on Instagram alone, maybe you want to use a tool like Hootsuite. If you're a business podcast, maybe you want to use something like Agorapulse. That might work a little bit better for yourself, all right? But you need to create things like templates, quick, repeatable content. It can look maybe a little bit the same, or maybe you can put a little bit of a variation in it. And when I talk about those templates, I'm talking about maybe if you're creating images that you want to put inside of a platform such as Instagram, where it's got your branding, and then it's something that all you have to do is create a duplicate of it inside of Canva or Adobe Express, and you're just creating at bulk, all right, based on the prompt that you have given to ChatGPT that came from your transcript. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing. So get that transcript, transcribe it, put it into ChatGPT, get the quotes that you need, put those quotes into Canva or Adobe Express, develop duplicates of those particular images that you can share out onto social media, download them, and schedule them. That's all you're doing. That's all you're doing, okay? So can you create a part of your workflow that you can automate a little bit better than others to make social media a little bit easier? That's something that I really want you to think about and make light of when it comes down to your own podcast. Coming up after the break, I want to reevaluate some systems and processes. I want to reevaluate them for you and ask a bunch of questions to you, because if you don't answer these questions, or if you're not at least thinking about them, you might be struggling to find the answers to promoting on social media. Coming up next on the Podcast Therapist. Oops. I guess I don't have to do that. You know what? Let's not do that. I was going to do a commercial break. Let's not do it. I don't have my Bluetooth connected. So yeah, see, I'm making mistakes right now as we speak. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. All right. Reevaluating your systems for processes. All right. That's my next segment header. All right. Now I have to ask you these questions. All right. Now, what is your current social media strategy? Have we answered that question? And how well is it working to achieve your podcast goals? Number 2, how much time are you spending on production versus promotion? And is it balancing or is it helping you or is it hindering you? All right. So ask yourself those questions. Now, here are 5 questions that I want to ask you. And I want you to take these seriously. Number 1, what is one platform or strategy you could simplify or stop using today to focus on what is working? Can you give up X? Is it not really working for you? Give it up. Focus your efforts on, Instagram. Number 2, how can you incorporate promotion into your podcast production workflow to save time? Can you create quotables inside of your actual podcast recording, whether that be audio or video? Is it up to you? Can you do that for yourself? How can you incorporate promotion into your podcast production workflow to save time? Number 3, what tasks could you delegate or automate to make the promotion easier? Do you have a podcast partner? Let's look at it this way. If you're going to be recording with a partner, well, how about you just take on the production side of it and then you have your partner do the promotion side of it and you'll help out whenever you can. Number 4, how does your content directly address your audience's biggest pain points or interests? Have you thought about that? Since we are focusing in this podcast, particularly about podcasters who are trying to create this as a business, can you focus on the pain points for them? How does your content directly address your audience's biggest pain points or interests? Number 5, what one change can you make right now to feel more confident and consistent with your social media promotion? That's where I want you to put your efforts and focus on. Okay? Social media, it doesn't have to be or feel like a full-time job. In fact, if you can figure out the simplification of your processes and focus on progress as opposed to like, oh my God, it didn't work, you can create a presence that actually grows your podcast over time. Podcast growth does not happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. And if it did happen overnight, it's because there was usually a large audience that was behind it, that was already grown from something else, or there was an opportunity to show up in maybe some mainstream media pieces that drove traffic to your podcast. But typically and most likely, podcast growth does not happen overnight at all. So I want you to take action and think about these questions. Go back and listen to them. Listen to the beginning of this episode and answer some of these questions. Pick one change that you can implement today that will make a complete difference with your podcast. On a final note, I want to share with you some thoughts about this podcast that we're creating and my episodes that I've been creating for my YouTube channel. I have been focusing on looking at detailed analytics inside of my YouTube channel based on these podcasts that I develop alone. And when you look at your analytics, such as I've done, you start to get a better picture about how long someone is listening, where they're listening, and how you can make those changes within the programming of your own podcast content. It's important that you get those types of analytics for yourself. If you're not getting those analytics, maybe what you need to think about is restructuring how you create the workflows for yourself in terms of production. I'm talking about audio production or video production. You need to think about how you need to restructure that or streamline it so that you can create more time to edit your podcasts. I'll tell you right now, because I do things on YouTube right now, Creating a YouTube podcast for me is it takes me at least the time that it takes to record the podcast. So in this circumstance, this is going to be a shorter podcast. So in this case, it's a 35 to 40 minute podcast. I'll be done with that. I'll pull that audio and video down. I have that audio and video down. And then I've created my own workflow that I have talked about in previous episodes of this particular podcast. I'll leave a link for my workflow podcast that you can listen to in the description of this particular episode for yourself. Make sure you check it out for yourself. All right. So I hope this episode has really helped you out. I hope it has made some type of wave in your head. It's giving you some type of clarity about like, okay, well, what am I doing? Where am I putting my efforts? I'm not putting efforts where I need to put them. Maybe it is all in the podcast editing. Your podcast editing, I know you don't want to hear about this. I know you don't want to hear that. Oh, I shouldn't have to ignore the ums and uhs. Sometimes you're just going to have to do that. That's the hard truth. It really is the hard truth. You got to find areas where you can shave them back so that you can be more productive on the promotion and marketing end for yourself. At max, it'll take me 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours to publish a video and an audio podcast for this particular podcast episode. That's what it will do. That's what it will be. I will be creating the podcast, the artwork, the descriptions, the titles, and I will be creating now the shorts for themselves. Where can you start streamlining your own podcast promotion processes? If you have questions about this, feel free to leave a comment on YouTube, hit the like button, ask me any question that you want, but where are you streamlining your process? And did this particular episode strike a chord with you? I want to hear about it in the YouTube comment section area. If you are not listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube and you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can go ahead and reach out to me on Threads. I do know that Spotify has comments, so you can leave comments on Spotify. I'll answer those as well. All right. And if you're looking to start a podcast and you just don't know exactly where to start, I encourage you to check out my essential equipment guide that is available for you to go ahead and download on YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and where is it? I'm going to put it over here. Where did I put it? It's over. I don't know where I put it. It's over there. There we go. It's going to be up in the top right-hand corner of your podcast player, and you can download that essential equipment guide. But for those of you who are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'll leave a link for that in the description below. So in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but again, not looking for perfection, but I'm looking to get the podcast content out there. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.
The Podcast Therapist.